I was kicked out because of my sister, and now I'm alone for the new year. I met a stranger who promised to help. Now my parents are crying because she's in prison. It's New Year's Eve, and I'm sitting alone in a cold apartment with nothing but silence to keep me company. It wasn't supposed to be like this. A week ago, I had a family, a warm home, and plans to celebrate with them, just like every year. But now I've been kicked out because of my sister, Emily. You'd think I would have seen this coming. Emily's been the golden child since we were kids, perfect grades, perfect friends, and perfect lies. I never thought one of those lies would cost me everything, though. She told my parents that I had stolen $20,000 from them. It was absurd. I couldn't even believe it when they called me into the living room. My mom was holding a box of tissues, and my dad couldn't even look me in the eye. When they told me what Emily had said, I laughed at first. I told them it wasn't true, that I would never touch their money. But Emily stood there with her crocodile tears, acting like she was some kind of victim. She said she'd caught me in her bedroom going through my dad's safe. I didn't want to believe it either. She sniffled. But I saw him, Mom. I'm so sorry. I kept telling them it wasn't true. I begged them to believe me. But my dad cut me off. He said they couldn't have a thief in the house, especially not in the family. I was told to pack my things and leave. I knew it was her. Emily was behind everything. But no matter what I said, they believed her. Why wouldn't they? She was their perfect little girl, and I was just me. I left that night with nothing but a duffel bag and my cell phone. I spent the next few days crashing on a friend's couch before finding this cheap, barely livable place. I didn't even try to explain it to anyone else, I was too humiliated. But as I sat there tonight, watching the clock tick toward midnight, I couldn't stop thinking about her. About what she'd done. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. She had taken everything from me, and I was going to find a way to take something back. What I didn't know was that help was coming. I found myself downtown, wandering near the giant Christmas tree. It was late, and the streets were quiet except for a few scattered groups heading home. I sat on a bench and stared at the lights. It felt surreal to be here alone, knowing that my family was probably sitting together right now, completely ignoring what they'd done to me. There was a guy sitting on the next bench, sharply dressed but looking tired. We caught each other's eyes, and he nodded at me. I wasn't in the mood for small talk, but somehow I managed to say something. Not exactly the picture of holiday cheer, I said. He grinned. Guess I'm not the only one. He paused, then added, What's your story? For some reason, I told him. Not everything, but enough how my sister had lied, how my parents had believed her without question, and how I'd ended up getting kicked out. He listened quietly, not saying much until I was done. Sounds like a mess, he said. But you're sure your sister's lying? 100%, I said. She's done this before, but this time she made it stick. And now I've got nothing. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. You know, he said, if you want to fight back, I might be able to help. I frowned. What do you mean? I'm a lawyer, he said. Contracts mostly, but I've handled worse. If you really want to prove that she set you up, we can make it happen. I stared at him, not sure if he was serious or just making conversation. Why would you help me? I asked. He shrugged. Call it a personal grudge. I don't like people who get away with things like that. I hesitated. It sounded crazy, but something about the way he said it made me think he wasn't just talking. Okay, I said slowly. What's the plan? He grinned faintly. Let's start with what you know. We'll figure out the rest. We spent the next 20 minutes huddled on the bench, working out a plan. His name was Daniel, and he seemed to know exactly how to deal with someone like Emily. The first step, he said, was to get proof, something solid that my parents couldn't ignore. She slipped up somewhere, Daniel said confidently. People like her always do. The key is to get her to admit it. I wasn't sure how to do that, but Daniel had an idea. Call her, he said. Ask her to meet you somewhere neutral. Say you want to talk things out. If she's as cocky as you say, she might let her guard down. What am I supposed to say? I asked. Let her do the talking, he replied. Just guide the conversation. Make her feel like she's already won, and she might tell you more than she intends. And then what? Record everything. It sounded risky, but what choice did I have? I agreed, and we set up a meeting for the next morning at a coffee shop a few blocks from my apartment. Daniel gave me a small recording device, something discreet I could slip into my pocket. I barely slept that night. The thought of facing Emily made my stomach churn, but I was determined. If she really had stolen from our parents just to frame me, I had to make sure she didn't get away with it. The next day, I arrived at the cafe early and chose a table tucked away from the main area. Emily showed up right on time, her usual smug confidence on full display. "Well," she said, sitting across from me, "I didn't think you'd want to see me again. Want to beg for forgiveness?" I clenched my jaw but kept my composure. "No," I said. "I just want to talk." She looked amused, but didn't argue. I started with a few vague questions about the situation, pretending I was trying to understand how things had gone so wrong. She answered easily, deflecting responsibility as if it were second nature. But then I steered the conversation. "You know, I've been thinking," I said. "If you hadn't said anything, I would have been stuck there forever, mooching off Mom and Dad." Her smile broadened, and I could see that she was starting to relax. "Exactly," she said. "And that wouldn't have been fair, would it? I mean, they already promised me the house. Why should I have to share it?" There it was. My pulse quickened, but I kept my face neutral. "You're right," I said. "And the money? What was that for?" She laughed. "Oh, don't worry about that. 20 grand is nothing compared to what they'll save by not having to take care of you. Besides, it went to good use: new clothes, a few charity donations. You know, for appearances." My stomach turned, but I didn't say anything. She kept talking, rambling on about how she'd been planning this for months. When she finally stopped, I had everything I needed. As soon as Emily left the cafe, I took off. I didn't even wait to finish my coffee. I had to get the recording to Daniel, and fast. When I got to his place, he was already waiting for me. He listened to the recording with a kind of quiet intensity, nodding occasionally but keeping his thoughts to himself. When it ended, he leaned back and let out a satisfied sigh. "Got it," he said simply. "Is that enough?" I asked, still unsure. "It's more than enough," he said. "She admitted to setting you up, stealing the money, and manipulating your parents. Now we just have to make sure the right people hear it." The next part of the plan was simple, but nerve-wracking. Daniel contacted the police, explained the situation, and offered the recording as evidence. He warned me that it might take some time to get a response, but I was still worried. The next day, the police showed up at my parents' house. I wasn't there, but Daniel made sure I was kept in the loop. Apparently, Emily tried to play the victim at first, but when they brought up the recording, her whole act fell apart. She denied it, then tried to blame me, and finally started crying, claiming she only did it because she was desperate. When they took her away, my parents were in shock. Daniel told me that they called him and demanded to know how I'd been involved. He told them the truth, that I'd recorded Emily and turned over the evidence. They didn't call me. Not that day anyway. That night, Daniel and I sat in his apartment and discussed the next steps. "She'll be charged with theft and fraud for sure," he said. "Maybe more, depending on how the prosecutors see it. Best case, she cuts a deal. Worst case, she does some real time." "And my parents?" I asked. He shrugged. "That's up to them. But you've done everything right. They know the truth now." That was the problem. I wasn't sure it would matter. The day after Emily's arrest, my mom called. I thought it might be an apology, or at least an acknowledgement of what had happened, but instead she sounded distant. "She's your sister," Mom said. "I don't know how you could do that to her." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Mom, she stole $20,000. She lied to you and Dad. She ruined my life to make sure she got everything. How can you still defend her? She made a mistake, Mom said. But jail? She's not cut out for it. I wanted to scream. So what? I should let her destroy me? There was a long silence before she finally said, "We'll talk later," and hung up. Later that night, Daniel and I went over the legal updates. Emily was being charged with theft and fraud, just as he predicted. It was likely that she would get some jail time, nothing extreme, but enough to make it clear that her actions would not be swept under the rug. "She'll probably end up with a year, maybe a little more," Daniel said. "It's not much, but it's something." I nodded, though it didn't feel like much of a victory. My parents hadn't called me since Mom's earlier conversation, and the thought of going back to their house made me sick. 2 days later, I finally heard from my father. He asked me to meet him at a diner, saying he wanted to straighten things out. When I got there, he looked older, as if the stress of everything had taken a toll on him. "Your mom is upset," he said. "But we know that what Emily did was wrong. I'm sorry we didn't believe you." That should have been enough, but it wasn't. I wanted him to stand by me, to finally see who Emily really was, but instead he kept making excuses for her. "She's been under a lot of pressure," he said. "She's always been emotional." "And what about me?" I asked. "Don't I matter?" "Of course you do," he said quickly. "We just didn't know what to believe." I left before the conversation could go any further. I couldn't sit there and listen to him try to justify their blind loyalty to her. Emily's trial came quickly. I wasn't there, but Daniel kept me informed. She pleaded guilty to avoid a lengthy trial, and the judge sentenced her to 18 months in prison. Daniel said it was fair, given the amount of money she'd stolen and her manipulative actions, but I still felt uneasy. My parents were devastated. They didn't call me, but I heard from a family friend that Mom hadn't stopped crying since the sentencing. Dad had apparently tried to hold it together, but he looked like a wreck. Through it all, I couldn't shake the guilt. Emily had done this to herself, and I knew she deserved the consequences, but it was hard to ignore the weight of how fractured my family had become. Daniel, on the other hand, was calm and matter-of-fact. "She played the game, and she lost," he said. "You shouldn't feel bad about holding her accountable. If you hadn't, she would have continued to run roughshod over you." He was right, but that didn't make it any easier. A week after the sentencing, my father showed up at my apartment unannounced. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. "We're not here to take sides," he said, sitting across from me. "But your mother and I are struggling with this. Emily is our daughter, too. And I'm your son." I shot back. He sighed heavily. "I know. That's why we supported the charges. She had to face the consequences. But you have to understand it is hard for us to see her in this situation. She's our little girl." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "She stole from you, Dad. She cheated me. She only cares about herself. Why can't you see that?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked down, his face set in something between guilt and frustration. "We see it," he said finally. "But we can't just stop loving them." Then it hit me, no matter what Emily did, she'd always be her priority. I'd proven my innocence, and they'd admitted she was wrong, but at the end of the day, she was still their golden child. When he left, I didn't feel angry, just tired. I wasn't sure what kind of relationship I would have with them in the future, but I knew it wouldn't be the same. The weeks after Emily's sentencing were quiet, but not in a peaceful way. I didn't hear much from my parents, except for a few awkward texts asking how I was doing. They were trying, I guess, but it felt hollow. Emily, on the other hand, made her presence felt, even from prison. Through mutual friends, I heard that she was telling anyone who would listen that I had set her up. She played the victim, claiming that the recording had been taken out of context and that I had twisted the situation to ruin her life. At first I was furious. But Daniel kept me grounded. "Let her talk," he said. The evidence is what matters, and she's already where she belongs. He was right, of course. Still, it stung to know that even after everything she'd done, she was still trying to turn people against me. My parents went to visit her in prison. Mom called afterward, her voice strained but determined. "She's really sorry, you know," she said. "She's learned her lesson. She's sorry she got caught," I replied. "That's not the same thing." Mom didn't argue, but I could hear the tension in her silence. I knew she wanted me to forgive Emily, to let it go so we could all move on. But I wasn't ready for that, and I wasn't sure I ever would be. In the meantime, I focused on putting my life back together. With Daniel's help, I found a better place to live and even started applying for new jobs. He wasn't just a lawyer, he had become a friend, someone I could actually trust. "You're doing the right thing," he told me one night when I admitted how lost I felt. "It's not easy to cut toxic people out of your life, especially when they're family. But you're stronger for it." I wanted to believe him, but part of me couldn't shake the sadness of it all. I'd always thought that family was supposed to stick together, no matter what. Now I wasn't sure what that meant anymore. I should have seen it coming, but somehow it still took me by surprise. After months of awkward phone calls and strained silences, my parents finally made their feelings clear. They invited me over, and for a moment I thought it might be a step forward in apology, or maybe just an attempt to make things right. But as soon as I walked in, I could feel the tension in the air. Mom was sitting at the dining room table, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Dad stood behind her, silent but stern. They didn't ask how I was or invite me to sit down. Instead, Mom began to speak, her voice low and trembling. "We've been thinking a lot about what happened," she said. "And we've decided that this is not how a family should treat each other." I didn't say anything, just stared at her, waiting for her to finish. "She's your sister," Mom continued. "And you're her brother. What you did, it wasn't right. Turning her in, sending her to jail. Whatever she did, you should have handled it differently. Family doesn't do that to each other." Dad nodded, but didn't add anything. He didn't need to. They were a united front, as usual. I wanted to argue, to point out how wrong they were. Emily had destroyed my life and they'd let her. I'd only fought back because no one else would stand up for me. But I knew it wouldn't matter. In their eyes, I had crossed a line that could not be undone. Mom's voice softened, as if that would somehow make it better. "We think it's best if we all take some time apart," she said. "Until everyone can calm down and think things through." I nodded once, silently, and turned to leave. That was 8 months ago. I haven't heard from them since, not a phone call, not a message, not even an awkward holiday card. I've moved on as best I can, but the silence is heavy. Emily is still in prison. I don't know if she learned anything, and honestly, I don't care. She's out of my life forever. My parents? I don't know if I'll ever see them again. Part of me misses them, but another part knows I can't go back, not after everything that's happened. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if I made the right choice. If standing up for myself was worth losing her. But then I remember the betrayal, the lies, and the way they turned their backs on me when I needed them most. And I tell myself that I made the only choice I could.